This is the last pile of rust. Yes! Last week I found some rust in the suspension pan, so I quickly cut it out with my plasma cutter after taking some careful measurements. This week I hope to remove all the original remnants of that suspension pan, get the front A-arms out of the way so I can have access to that weld area, treat and destroy all the remaining rust and pitted areas, prep the original flanges for the new pan, trim the new pan to fit the car. It's measure once, cut twice, or measure twice, cut once.
Garage time.
Hey guys, my name's Tom, and this channel is all about inspiring you to build your dream car. So please take a moment now to subscribe. Hit the bell button next to the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. This is going to be a fun one. As you can see here, this RS bumper has a cutout here, or an area for a front-mounted oil cooler, which I'm definitely going to run. So that is important because as the air comes in, it has to be able to flow through the oil cooler, which is a little bit bulky, and then flow down under the car. And the way this stock latch panel is, it doesn't really have the room for both the oil cooler and the air to flow. So I'm going to have to make some modifications to the front here. So before I take the bumper off, I want to mark where this oil cooler location is on the existing front bulkhead so I can kind of do a little planning. Okay, so one thing led to another, and it ended up taking off the whole front suspension from the cross member down. So for my car, it's not that big of a deal because it doesn't have any brakes on it. The brake lines are all disconnected. One of the reasons why I dropped it all the way down is because I want to get the best possible measurement from those rear pickups, and this allows me to get right to the root of where the hole in the chassis is. So it just makes it easier for me to measure. So as you can see now, I have much better access to this weld seam, this seam right here. This is the one that I need to clean off and separate these pinch welds so I can finish removing this existing pan. I'm under the driver's side fender well now, and I've just put some paint stripper on this seam. You can see here I just got a little paintbrush here with some paint stripper. And I'm just letting it work on that seam so I can kind of soften up it a little bit. It's already pretty soft, but I'm going to come back with my wire brush, expose all the factory spot welds, drill those out, and then split it from the inside. I'm going to do that on both sides, and then we should be able to prepare the metal for the new suspension pan. I have to switch to a longer drill bit here just because this battery indentation is kind of in the way. So the chuck of the drill was hitting the car. So I'm just making it longer with a regular drill. And if it goes all the way through, that's okay because the piece on the far side is going to get thrown in the trash anyways. Sometimes bad things just happen. I was underneath here and drilling out these lower spot welds. And then, I don't know if you can see there, but that's my, my drill bit, or my spot weld cutter is just broken off right in there. Here it is on the drill side, just completely twisted, sheared off. But while I'm down here, I wanted to show you, this is kind of the mark of where the oil cooler is. And right here, just above this line right here, this crease right here, That's where the top of the oil cooler is. So rather than drill spot welds out here, I was just gonna use the air saw anyways. Okay, I've made some good progress. I'd say I'm probably about, I don't know, maybe 60% done. And sometimes the pieces come off in big chunks and sometimes they don't. Here's kind of the pile of pieces. Sometimes you can get, you know, a good 10 inches at once, and then sometimes it's literally, you know, it's just literally like, you know, inch by inch. And here's how the car is looking. I didn't want to change this front latch panel to be the original 73 because it was just going to get thrown away anyways. A big portion of it was going to get thrown away. That's because I'm using the front oil cooler. So it just didn't make sense to me to go through the expense of buying the long hood, the factory long hood, and then buying the factory front latch plate, and then modifying it for the oil cooler. Okay, this section right down here is definitely going to need to be repaired. It's just too eaten away, too thin, a little bit pitted on both sides of this. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to take some templates and then I'm going to cut this out. And instead of replacing it as is, I want to fit the new panel and then I'm going to put that in. Same thing is true for this side. It just, this lower section, the lowermost point in the car, it's just got that corrosion on it. Here the sidewall isn't as corroded. I tried to show you some pictures from underneath, but it's mostly this lower flange. I'm likely to just do a weld seam up high like that, so it's a better repair. But on this side, I very well might be able to just replace the lower section. The other side, I'm going to cut a little higher. Okay, I'm very relieved to have gotten that the old panel out. And you know, it's just a lot of tedious work. It's not super difficult. It just takes a lot of time. It's a lot of positioning to get your strength on the drill, to get the spot welds cut. A lot of hammering, kind of grinding, cutting. It's just messy work. It's difficult on the garage floor. I guess the million-dollar question is, you know, what's the hard part? Is it removing the old one or is it putting the new one in? And I don't know the answer to that. I've never done this before. I would be shocked if it just fits right in place. But I'm going to get ready to do that now. So cross my fingers. Wish me luck. Leave a comment below if you've done this job before and what your experiences are with panels that fit versus don't fit. Okay, this is right out of the box. I haven't trimmed a single thing. The bottom, you can see there's a little bit of daylight right here. Probably the pan needs to come forward a little bit. We'll take a little bit of that out. Some trimming is going to be required here on the front, which is totally normal. On this side, the space between this flange, it's a little bit off. I mean, the curvature is just a little bit different. I can probably hammer and dolly here and then just fold this flange down just a little bit, but it's not a perfect fit. Along the front, you can kind of see it's fitting along the front, although, you know, this has all been cut away for the oil cooler. Okay, here you can see the curvature is just a little different between the original panel and the new panel. Some of this can be, you know, fixed with hammer and dolly, but you can see how it's kind of coming together here. And I'm getting a little bit better fit on this side. This is the passenger side versus the driver's side was a little bit further off. But, and then definitely have to trim back here. But it looks like it's gonna fit. It's just gonna take some trimming, some massaging, and some kind of bending to get it in the right place. And then I haven't even checked the front to rear alignment with the suspension points, but I'm going to go from here all the way to this location right back here. So that pickup to the forward pickup is the number we need. Okay, so I have the tram gauge in place at the rear. You can see it's inside the hole there. I'll try to wiggle a little bit. So it's at the rear, and then this is, like I said, this is untrimmed, kind of first guess. But when I put this up to here, there is a misalignment. It's about a whole off. Now, I would have thought that the pan needed to go further forward, but this is telling me it needs to go further back. And I don't know what that's going to do to the alignment up here, since this is already not fitting that well. So most importantly is that the suspension points are in the correct place and everything is square. But right now, this is just the very first look at what I'm up against. I'm doing the same thing on the driver's side, and I'm seeing something different on this side. I'm seeing that the hole is off in the other direction, so it's definitely not sitting in here square. This needs to have the pan shifted forward, which that's fine, because I know right now it's being obstructed by this part here, which needs to be trimmed. All right, the other thing I want to do before I go too far cutting and installing this pan in the car is to make sure that the pan itself is made correctly. And I think it is, but I'm just going to double check here with the factory dimensions. The width across these two holes is 565.5, according to my trusty diagram. So I'm setting up the tram gauge at that dimension, 565.5. Yeah, so these pins go right in the holes, which is awesome. This was made correctly. The other thing to do is to take this suspension part and lay it on top and make sure the holes are in the right place. Yeah, all three holes are lined up. The biggest difference between the original panel and the reproduction panel is this curvature on this gas tank lip is a little different. This is like a kind of a full circle, no real flat spot on it, it's just round on top. Whereas the original part had a profile which was really more of a C shape. It was squared off on the edge here where the tank goes, and even on this side it had some squareness to it. So I like this better because it gives a surface to weld the top plate onto. This is going to be a little tricky to weld onto. I might hammer and dolly this a little bit just to get a bit of a flatter surface on top, make it a little bit more original, mostly for function, not really appearance. Okay, here's a view from the top, so inside the trunk. I just wanted to show you what it looks like from here. So there is a big gap right here, a lot of daylight in that place, and it appears as though, you know, this can get closed up if I slide the pan forward. But based on the dimensions from this hole to the crossmember hole, this is about where it needs to be. So this is going to need to be massaged both on the car and on the panel to get that gap to close up. And then the same is true on this side. So the gap is very similar on this side. And so that's just going to need a little bit of massaging. You can see from here, this can all be kind of bent to flatten up against the original bulkhead. This is the oil cooler cutout, so this is all going to get removed in the future. All right, I'm in the process of squaring up the pan in the car, but what I really need is the diagonal. So diagonal from the front to that rear member. So this kind of looks like a diagonal, but this is the, I guess this is like a tolerance or something. So I know the widths, and I did a little bit of math. Don't freak out here, but this is what I use to calculate the diagonal. If you know the width at the rear, these are the suspension points at the rear, suspension points at the front, bada boom, bada bang, and the number is 916.5. Okay, I set my tram gauge to 916.5 and we check the car. Okay, so this is now connected and lining up from diagonal to diagonal. Here's from passenger side to driver side. And then on this way, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but this is connected from driver's side to passenger side, perfectly lined up. But I did need a little help. Let me show you from the top. So originally there was a small misalignment between the diagonals, and I've corrected that using this kind of porta-powered jack. So it's going from this corner. It has a piece of angle iron there to strengthen it so I don't dent the structure. But that jack is moving all the way over here to the front and pushing on the lower corner. I'm trying not to change the hood alignment, although it might change it some. But I had to shift this about 3 millimeters to get the diagonals to line up. And that's probably due to some stress that was in the original panel after I removed it. There's the pump right there. So right now it's in the correct place. I'm gonna probably need to stretch it a little beyond its existing location so that the spring back puts it in the correct place without any stresses on it. I just have a couple vice grips there holding it in place right now. Okay, now although this isn't fully trimmed and fit in its final position, these locations of the front mounting points are accurate. So the distance from front to rear is correct and the diagonal distance is correct. So I have to stop here. Next week it'll be fully welded in place and I can't wait. Please come back next week and check it out. Thank you.